So Satnam Ji, Kamalroop
Satnam.
Singh Kasa. So I'm very honored that you can join us. You can have this little moment with us and share a bit of your perspectives and your wisdom. And I thought that to begin to introduce you and what you represent, what you carry, would be interesting that you talk to us a little bit about what is this notion of being a warrior in your tradition. I think we really need to plug with this notion of the right way to be a warrior in our societies today, no?
Okay, Mukandeji, thank you first of all for having me on this transmission. And yeah, a little bit about myself. I'm born in England in a Sikh family, Punjabi Sikh family. My first teacher of our Dharma was my grandmother. She was very universal. She liked Sufism, she liked Hinduism, she liked everything. She saw oneness in everything. And so I kind of had a good teacher from the beginning when I was very young, and she taught me mantra and breathing exercises and history and all types of things. And yeah, being brought up in the West, I had the conditioning from school, and then I kind of didn't understand the purpose of my tradition. And then for about 4 or 5 years, from about 14 to about 18, I kind of went away from it. And in those years, I got very, very sick. I nearly died. I had a near death experience that made me see life very much different. By 19, I was in India. I met my teacher for the first time. And then, literally a year or two after that, I was back in India again, and I was learning from him and the other Nihangs. I started looking at specific things to do with Shakti Bani, or the kind of, mantra to do with Durga, Kali, the feminine divine, in Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th Guru's writings called the Dasam Granth. Then I got very deep into researching that. I ended up staying 4 years in India, traveling in pretty much every state in India, Pakistan as well, Canada as well, America, all over Europe for my research, different universities and libraries. And in the end, I got my PhD. Some of my work was published by Oxford University Press. And my teacher was very, very happy with me in India. And he blessed me with this thing called a Fadla. It gives me the epithet or the title called Mahakal. It's a tantric term. It means a kind of a guardian or protector of Dharma. It's a name of Shiva, and it also represents somebody who can destroy karmas through prayer, through meditation, through tantric exercise, mainly with the mantra, fire worship, medicine preparation, Ayurveda, prayers, all this type of stuff, pure self-purification, and offering that to mankind. So that's really my pathway. I'm not so much academic now. I've stepped back from that. I'm just finishing some academic work, which I think will take me about another 8 years. And then after that, I will never really touch it again. But I want to finish the work that I began. And yeah, our tradition is a warrior tradition. We see Durga Mata as the goddess who teaches us that art, and Kali Mata. And, that's the, divine feminine energy. We believe it was embodied in Guru Gobind Singh's wife, Mata Sab Gorma or Mata Sab Deva. And that transmission of the feminine divine is what for us is the warrior energy, the mother energy, because the energy of the mother is protective. It's not like being a barbarian, it's not violent. It's self-defense, is protecting yourself and others for defensive purposes, or energetically defending yourself, also intellectually, mentally. And that's considered a good thing. It's not considered violence. It's still in the lines of Indian tradition of ahimsa, of non-violence. And so we don't attack, we defend. And so a warrior is a defender. Self-defense is no offense. And that warrior for us is a very maternal energy. It comes from the same energy of a lioness who wants to protect her cubs from the hyenas. It's this kind of energy of protection. It's not the energy to hurt somebody or to harm somebody. It's the energy to stop somebody from committing further worse dark action. And so this is in lines with Dharma. It's the same conversation that Krishna had with Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which is he shouldn't drop his sword just because it involves killing his own relatives. He's fighting on the right side and he cannot allow evil to continue. And that's in the Bhagavad Gita chapter of the Mahabharata. And so a warrior is somebody who protects what is good, what is right. Physical warrior, that of course we learn martial arts, we learn Ayurveda, we keep physically fit, but it's also a warrior of energy, of the astral, of embodying what that Mahakal, that tantric energy is on the astral, to destroy ignorance, to liberate the demons, not to even destroy the demons, to make the demons into angels, to give them so much love and good energy that they can shed their ignorance, that they can drop that load of ignorance and become wise and enlightened. And so that's our pathway, and that's what we try to achieve. We do that through mantra, consistent mantra practice every day, early hours of the morning, after bathing in the cold water, outside or with fire, with nature, with our horses, encampment, and kind of doing some breath work as well. And between 12 midnight and 8 o'clock in the morning, trying to get a good many hours as possible in of that type of meditation, because that allows us to tackle that ignorance head on. And we know the world at the moment is very fascist and very ignorant, a lot of fear going around, and war, and economic warfare on people and everything else. And we have to be strong, we have to have a strong energy to get through the maybe next 10 years or so, which are going to be very turbulent, maybe even 15. Let's see how it plays out.
Thank you so much for sharing all this way of life. It's touching me. I feel very close to the identity of the warrior, and I know that many times this is not understood. Many times people around me fear this energy or question it, as it is something also that is delicate, to deal with. It's a sword, and you have this sword very present also in your tradition, and sometimes we can misuse the sword, no? What would you answer to this kind of people, and also maybe especially from your own experience? I mean, in our own lives, we know also that sometimes we have to regulate the fire of our own practices, no? And how to deal with that?
I think the people who are afraid of the sword or the warrior, they have a legitimate concern because there's so much violence in society, and they're going to look at the sword as an instrument of oppression, of killing, of murder, of mugging, of theft, of criminality. But the sword itself, this was forged in the fire, and through the fire, when the sword was made, like the Excalibur or the Saif of Imam Ali or the Khanda of Guru Gobind Singh. I remember Durga, she carries a sword in her hand. And so this kind of energy is the energy of cutting through ignorance, and the light of God or the light of the goddess cutting through ignorance. So the sword is an instrument of freedom. It's the instrument of speech. The tongue is a sword. Words are like swords as well. They can cut. And so the sword has a lot of metaphor, duality, that the duality of this world is through the sword, and so on. And so, yeah, there's one aspect is the sword for us is an instrument of magic, of an instrument of good magic, of white magic, of liberation. Yes, and it's there for defense. And I understand why people will see it in a bad way. But if we look at something that's sharp, like in the hands of a heart surgeon, a knife, which is a sword, even if it's a small one, it cuts open somebody's chest and it saves their life, because of the operation on their arteries to let the heart beat again. that's also cutting into them, but it gives them life. And in the same way, a knife can be used to stab somebody to death in a criminal action, in a murder. But it doesn't mean the sword is bad. It's the person's intention using that tool which makes it so. Not in its own self is neutral. And so if we take the sword with a good intent, there's good magic, good energy, good ritual we can do with it, and we can purify with it, and we can. Guru Gobind Singh in Dasam Granth says, when you wear this sword, Kror Paap Tariyan, that millions of sins, millions of defilements, millions of ignorances, millions of negative things are taken away from your body if you commit to the sword, if you commit to the martial way. And so we're living in a world which is very subservient, where masculinity is hyper masculine. Some men are becoming very feminine. Some women are becoming hyper masculine. Everything's all over the place. So we need the warrior to come back. Otherwise, we're going to have like police, and the police are no warriors, and the army are no warriors. They're economic warriors. They fight for money. They don't fight for justice. They don't fight for liberation. They don't fight for righteousness. They fight for criminality, oil wars, wars about shipping routes, wars about the interests of a country in another area. It's not righteous war. It's not war, spiritual war. We need warriors who are righteous and willing to fight, and good from their heart, men and women. We need this in the world right now. Otherwise, we're all going to become mushy peas, like, broken down bananas, and with no backbone and no spirit to even speak, or walking along looking at the ground. That's what we're going to get, and that's not what we should ever be. We should be strong.
Beautiful, thank you. And it makes me think about also what I like to call now sacred organic psychedelics, because there are many kinds of psychedelics, and there might be very ancestral plants of power and of spirit that you also may use from your tradition. You may say to us how you work with that, but generally we say that a plant can also have, like the sword, the very bad effect, like a poison, or it can be also a medicine, depending the use we make of it. And I wanted to ask you what kind of advice we can spread around in all these groups of people that are much more and more interested in the use of psychedelics, to sometimes with good intention to know more about life, about themselves, but sometimes also with a lot of ignorance using it. So what is your vision about that?
I would say first thing is look at the lineage, look at the training that person has had, ask them where they went, how they learned, what happened to them, how you should prepare, what's the preparation, because psychedelics are dependent on one thing, your body, and your body is dependent on one thing, your diet. And so if you don't follow a specific diet tailor-made for psychedelics, you will have a bad effect. It doesn't matter how healthy you are, because the chemical combination in the stomach can be bad. And if that happens, a psychedelic, it can become like dark. It can take a person to a dark area because their stomach is malfunctioning. So the lower chakras aren't working properly. So the person loses their stability. Then they can they can have a bad trip unnecessarily. So if your shaman tells you about dieter, tells you about like breathing, relaxation, prayer, mantra, self-purification, up to your medicine ceremony, that person's going to probably be good. And if you check their history of where they learned from and what their plant they're using and how much they know, that should verify for you whether you should be with that shaman. And if they haven't got a lineage, if they're like, just taught themselves in their bedroom because they had nothing better to do and they ordered it off the internet, I would say stay away, because I'm really seeing a lot of casualties now to plant medicine. I've heard of 3 suicides in the UK connected to ayahuasca. I know of 1 madness and connected to ayahuasca and somebody not following the diet properly in Peru. I can carry on and on. But, you know, rapé, every other shaman is addicted to rapé 20 times a day, you know, snorting it up their nose. I don't think that's how we should use rapé. And so I'm seeing a lot of stuff happening now when people who pass through my home, like there's one gentleman here, he's always on rapé. I met another guy, he used to be a cocaine addict. Now he's a rapé addict and he thinks he's off cocaine. Of course he's not. He's just replaced it with rapé. And so, yeah, we need to be very, very careful. And a lot of these people are running ceremonies and doing healings, and they've still got big dark archon energy in their aura holding them. And this is not healthy. You must clear your aura of all infestations and parasitic energies before you can even call yourself a shaman. And looking at the word shaman, actually the word shaman is from India, and the word is shraman. Shraman means somebody who has a sense of shame, somebody who has a sense of humility, somebody who doesn't want to be in the limelight, somebody who likes to hide away, somebody who doesn't want exposure, somebody who is shy, sensitive, somebody who lives away from the tribe, somebody who lives alone because of their sensitivity. Not somebody who wants to be in the limelight, who wants the ego, the money, you know, knows a few prayers and can play the guitar a little bit and hasn't had any spiritual purification. And like, for if somebody's done, even I have people I've met and they said, I learned 6 months in the Amazon and I did a dieter for 6 months. Yeah, great. 6 years maybe, then I can say, okay. 20 years, 10 years, I say, okay. But I'd say if somebody comes to you and they haven't had less than 10 years, they've had less than 10 years experience, no matter how shiny, glorious they are, run away. I wouldn't be involved, because it takes you, as you know yourself, they're working with the various plants, takes a long time, and they just open up further and deeper and deeper. And then you think you're healed, and then you go back and you find another layer. Then you think you're healed, you go back, you find another layer. And so this work is ongoing, it never finishes, but you have to get to a certain level of psychic cleanliness, psychic kind of purity. So these are the things I'd say. In our tradition, we use marijuana mainly.